Patrick Williams. How are you?
I'm doing good, Rich. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I appreciate you coming on today and letting the audience get a glimpse of your storyline and sharing that with them.
My pleasure. I've been looking forward to it.
Excellent, excellent. Let me give a brief introduction for you for the audience so they get a feel for who you are before we get into the conversation. You are an award winning international artist exhibited across the US, Japan, and China, with works featured in both public and private collections, represented by galleries in Chicago, Seattle, Omaha, and Albuquerque. You're a TEDx speaker. You delivered a powerful TEDx talk titled Creativity, Lost and Found, exploring your personal journey and reclaiming creative authenticity. You're the founder and CEO of Satori Innovation, a consultant and ideation accelerator focused on restoring innate creative capacities to fuel innovation. You're the visionary, educator, and a scholar with over 40 years teaching and facilitating deep creative learning, developed the philosophy of creativity to reawaken general creativity in individuals. And you have martial arts credentials, which you hold black belts in Karate Do and Aikido Do, blending discipline practice with creative insight. That's a tremendous career.
Well, thank you.
So I only have one scripted question, and it's always the first one, and that is, where were you born, and what was life like as a kid for Patrick?
Right. I was born right here in Omaha, Nebraska,
All right.
and I moved back here with my wife 5 years ago after living in a lot of different places in the country. 10 years in Chicago, so not far from you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we loved Chicago. That was in 2000. We got married that year and moved to Chicago. Uh, but back to growing up, I grew up here in Omaha, outside city limits,
Okay.
and I was. We had it was kind of a small acreage. We had hogs and steers and when I was young, chickens, and dad, every once in a while, we'd have a few sheep, we'd have a few goats, from some dealing that he did with another farmer, and dad had something he wanted, and they had a sheep or something. So,
Right.
uh, but he also had a full-time job working at the Metropolitan Utilities District
Okay.
as a laborer. And mom was stay-at-home mom. And then once I got into school, she started working again. And let's see, in my TEDx talk, I talk about the woods a lot, and I spent a tremendous amount of time in the woods growing up. I drew a lot. It
Okay.
sounds like you were the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah.
And that was a major part of home life and uh, being in the woods. I say in the TEDx talk that dad was an alcoholic, so that
Oh,
was a major factor growing up,
sure.
and ups and downs with that.
Yeah.
And I was totally disinterested in school until the sixth grade.
All right.
And all my friends in sixth grade, we went from the elementary school to the junior high. That year was the first year that our junior high had sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth grades.
Okay.
And within a couple weeks, all of my friends were in this after school class called Challenge. And I was like, well, I want to be in it because they were telling me all these cool things that they were doing, watching these documentaries and going on field trips.
Yeah.
And so I asked my sixth grade teacher, and she said, well, your grades aren't good enough to be in that class. And I I was persistent in asking her, well, I want to be in, what can I do? And she kept saying, and this is all in one, like me going up at lunch when all the kids were in the cafeteria.
Yeah.
And I just stood there, and which was sort of unusual for me. I was shy when I was
Okay.
young,
Yeah.
but I was really, up against, I want to be with my friends, and how do I do this? And she said, well, your grades aren't good enough. And I had been in grade school in the lowest reading group, the lowest math group. I don't know, I don't know if we had any other groups that we were divided into in uh, grade school. But the same was in sixth grade. And
Yeah.
and she said, well, you'd have to do better in your grades, and you'd have to go up in higher and higher till you got to the top reading group and the top math group. I said,
Yeah.
okay, how do I do that? And she was like, okay, I think this kid is like focused on this task.
Sure.
So she told me, and a couple of weeks later, I was in challenge class because I didn't know how to study. I had never thought about studying. All I wanted to do was be outside or draw, and that was my first experience of in a word in a sixth grade level of academia,
Right.
and so that kind of shifted a lot of things shifted. Then she suggested to my mom that I get glasses
Okay.
also,
Yeah.
because she noticed that I was always squinting and not really seeing the board, and that was some of the reason why I wasn't doing well in class. Uh,
Makes sense.
yeah, so a lot of things fell into place that year, and that was just a couple years after the the TEDx talk story,
Okay.
and so many things shifted then, and then in seventh grade, I really had fun studying subjects. And then in a way by ninth grade, I had lost the spark to really push myself that way.
Right.
So I got average, maybe ones and twos, and every once in a while a three if I wasn't paying attention. But
Right.
my focus shifted back to focusing on my art and being outside and just hanging out. But I did have a better relationship to studying and to academics after that, and started reading more. I didn't
Okay.
I, I didn't talk until I was like three, which
Ah.
is there's
All right.
there's a word for it. I can't remember the word. Einstein was like that. There's a bunch of folks that are like, whatever.
Yes.
I'm not talking.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You came in wanting to observe.
yeah, totally. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
with with what you experienced with your father, and this is just because of trying to give the audience more information if they haven't watched the TEDx talk.
Mm,
I'm picking up that the the woods, nature, your creativity, that was kind of your escape option for you at that time.
absolutely.
Did you also feel more connected to that environment versus seeing it as, okay, I just need to get over here and I don't have to deal with anything else?
Yeah. I I I think I was simply more connected to that environment,
Yeah.
both to drawing and to the woods, but there was something underneath that I felt uneasy,
Okay.
and uh, it wasn't until years later when I would be in therapy or a lot of processing that my wife and I have done. She's a psychotherapist. She
Oh wow.
she
Okay.
has been. She
Yeah.
she's she wore that hat for many years,
Right.
and it wasn't until then that I really comprehended the neglect,
Okay.
and I think I think in a way the neglect was a little bit more of my driving outside than necessarily dad's alcoholism.
Okay.
You know, that was difficult, you know, in
Sure.
when, you know, when I'm looking back and you know, him out in the kitchen. We had a really, really small house. And until I was 13, I slept in the living room
Okay.
on the couch.
Yeah.
And then I, for a few years, I had a pull-out bed, the last couple years that I slept out there. So I could see him if it was later out in the kitchen, just kind of with his head down. So though there's a lot of sadness that I have around how he lost himself in those
Right.
years. He stopped drinking cold turkey in I think 1976.
Okay.
I'm not positive. So I was in that was my senior year in high school. I graduated in 77.
All right.
And that was, you know, remarkable that, you know, he was just like, no, we had a
Yeah.
big family process, my mom and my sister, and then me. And, you know, I basically told him, you know, you're losing everybody and you'll lose me if you keep doing this. He said,
Okay.
I'll just, you know, in a way disown you forever. And so
Right.
I think maybe mom and Lori said similar things to him. And so it was like a three strikes and you may be out.
Yeah.
So he stopped drinking, and that was, you know, that was a remarkable kind of transformation to see him change and sort of in a way discover himself again. He had retired by then. Dad was much older than I. He was older when I was born. He was 42. So
Okay.
he had retired and you know basically had was really discovering who he was. So, you know, that was really refreshing to see. But the neglect circling back was where I think where I really, the woods were a place, it was a place that none of the people were there, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they couldn't follow me. And they certainly couldn't go up any trees. I got out of a lot of haircuts climbing trees or going to church.
Nice.
Those are
Nice.
my two methods of getting out of things.
Okay.
Uh, but the house was really small. You know, we didn't have any air conditioning back then,
Yeah.
so it was hot, humid in the summer, just uncomfortable. It was just it was complete chaos in the house. There's just stuff. Every flat surface had stuff piled on it. So it was the I sought out the chaos of nature, the natural chaos of nature is busy and there are trees and limbs and plants and grass and all kinds of things in a jumble, but it's a jumble that is natural.
Right.
The jumble in the home was unnatural and disturbing. So
Confining.
confining, yeah, yeah.
How about did you know your grandpa or grandparents at that point in time?
Yes, I knew my mom's mother and father,
All
but
right.
my dad's folks, they had died almost 10 years before I was born. Not quite 10 years. Five 5 years and 8 years.
Okay.
And they were at that point they were in their mid 80s.
Oh wow. Okay.
So in they my dad was born when my grandfather was 54, I think.
Ah.
And then I was born when dad was 42. So if my grandfather had been alive, he would have been like 96 or something when
Right.
I was born. Uh, but I was close to my grandfather on my mom's side. And he was older too. He was all my grandparents were born in the youngest was my grandmother, his wife, my mom's mom, and she was born in 1900.
Okay.
Everybody else was born in the
Right.
1800s. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Grandpa he was he was 26 when he entered World War One in
Wow.
1919. Yeah. So, or yeah, 27, 28, something like that. Whenever we, whatever year that was. I thought it was 1919. Maybe it's 1917. Anyway, I was close to him, and he was a photographer. He dabbled in photography. He lost one eye in World War One,
Oh,
and uh, my mom and her sister didn't know until they were like 8 and 5, because he one of his lenses in his glasses shattered and he didn't get it fixed.
okay.
And they said, Dad, what's going on? Why don't you fix it? Isn't it hard to see? And he said, no, it's not. I can't see out of that eye. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, they never knew. It was like old school stuff. It's like, whatever,
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But he had a little air rifle downstairs that he practice shot with. He set the whole thing up in his basement. It was a little, you know, kind of,
Shooting range.
yeah, a little shooting range. So we would do that together. Uh, and years and years before that, he would come out to our place before the interstate was there. My dad had set up a small skeet shooting area, and he would come out, and a bunch of other folks. Our family doctor would come out, and
Oh,
they'd
okay.
once a month they'd shoot skeet out there. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
One of the themes that I see across the interviews that I've been doing is that a lot of times there's a little bit of a closer relationship to the grandparents
Mm,
in those early years
sure.
than there are to the parents, and I think that usually is just a scenario of the times, and the fact that the parents are just trying to make ends meet and
Mm,
get things done and take care of providing, but yet they don't always express that closeness and love and connectivity that the child is looking for. And a lot of times the grandparents are able to provide some of that, uh,
100%.
which is it's wonderful that there is that opportunity for a child to, be able to engage with the grandparents with the things that your dad was dealing with in terms of working with the utility companies. Was there potentially something that you might have sensed or saw that um, kind of caused him to continue to pursue drinking? Was it for him? Was it a way of uh, kind of tamping down his thoughts,
Mm,
or was it just so strenuous the work that he was doing that he just needed to take the edge off after he got home?
yeah, I've thought about this. Uh,
Okay.
so he grew up, he was the, he had 11, he had 10 brothers and sisters. And he
Yeah.
was a twin, but the twin didn't survive. So, and I
Hmm.
don't know how many other miscarriages grandma may have had, but so huge family,
Yep.
and not, they were farmers.
Yep.
My grandfather farmed, and then he would uh, plow the gravel roads in the county,
Yeah.
and he did that with a team of horses.
Okay.
So like major old school.
Yeah.
And he was uh, my grandfather Williams was abusive to the older kids.
Gotcha.
And my dad and his younger brother, they would run to the barn and just escape. So he had that abuse,
Yeah.
and of course grandpa was a drinker also.
Yeah.
So that followed him. And I think that there's a lot of sadness that he didn't quite know how to deal with having not stayed a farmer full on,
Right.
rather than going to get jobs. Dad left school in the 8th grade. He was like old school, and his he he probably didn't read at much more than a 3rd grade level.
Yeah.
You know, he would always have me look up phone numbers in the phone book. I would sometimes I'd write notes for him, and this was, I'm 7, 8 years old,
Yeah.
or so. So he struggled. He wasn't, this is, I'm not saying it in a rude way, but he just didn't have the intelligence to be a farmer on his own,
Sure.
to do everything that he needed to do. They had built a hog barn on the property, and he always was raising hogs. He'd raise hogs, he'd sell the young ones off. And in high school, I eventually asked my mom, "It's like, does Dad make any money at this?" And she said no. She said it pretty much just breaks even.
Yeah.
But he had to have that in his life. We always had a couple steers, and so we had meat. That wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
We had pork and we had beef all the time. So it was the best ever. I hardly ever get meat as good as we had growing up. So the food was not a neglect, and Dad always had a garden. That was in his DNA also. But I think it was a sense of he had, and he's Irish, right? So
Okay.
he had
Yeah.
that that very, in some ways it's cliche, but that sort of sad longing that all of us with Irish blood have. I think it's about Atlantis
It could
or
be.
something.
Could
Yeah,
very much be.
it's like a 15,000-year sorrow
Yeah.
that just keeps going, but until we build it again or something. I don't know, but
Yeah.
Dad always had a bit of a sadness about him, even after he stopped drinking. That
Okay.
it followed him. So I think the work he labored. He mowed the grass in the summer, and he moved snow in the winter. So he was always on the tractor, which is, back to the farming concept.
Yeah.
Uh, and when he'd get home, he would be out with his tractor plowing all the neighbors. We lived out in the country, so, the neighbors were, some of them were sort of close, but he'd be gone for like 3 hours
Yeah.
plowing everybody else's drive. So he just had that in his nature. Always. It wasn't until I had to have been 40. No, I wasn't 40 yet. I was in my mid 30s, was the first time we were helping a neighbor pull down a barn with the
Okay.
tractor
Yeah.
and chains.
Yeah.
And Dad said, "Let's take a break." And I looked at him and I said, "That is the first time ever in my life that you said, 'Let's take a break first.'" And
Wow.
he slapped me on the back and he said, "Well, it was about time," or something. So and he was just a remarkable worker. He could do anything. He
Yeah.
could braid ropes. I mean, the list goes a long ways, yeah, of what
Yeah.
he knew. He could pick up soil uh, near a chicken coop and say what the chickens needed,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
It's just remarkable how much he knew about farming and the land. So,
For sure. I can relate to that. My father's family, both sides of the family, mom's side and dad's side, are all from East Tennessee.
mm,
So that's where everybody is. They came up here in the 60s because he was a mechanic. And so he came up here because of the auto industry.
auto, sure,
Easy work
yeah,
was available. But he also had 11 brothers and sisters, um, big family, uh, quit school at the 8th grade as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
Um, so very similar in terms of that storyline. And also too, his father would work for other farms.
Mm.
So that's what they would do. It's just the kids that were old enough and able to, they would just go around to everybody's farms and help out, and that's how they would make money and different things like that. Um, so I can understand that
Mm.
perspective and that work ethic that's there
Mm-hmm.
based off of being on the farm, and also too, I was fortunate enough to be able to experience that because my mom's parents had a farm as well. It wasn't huge, but
Mm.
it was enough. They had hogs and they had cows and a horse at one point in time.
Mm.
But it was that scenario. You just had those extra things to supplement. If you had any other kind of job. Um,
Totally.
and my grandfather, my mom's dad, he worked for Wholesome Defense, where they would make all of the artillery and mortars and stuff for the army and the military. Did that for a while. Did janitorial work for a while, and then eventually he shifted into. He was a Southern Baptist minister
Mm.
on the tail end of his life. Um,
Wow.
so a whole lot of experiences that I had when we would go down for the summer or vacation for the holidays, different things. I had those worlds collide,
Mm-hmm.
and then back here to Metro Detroit, and it was like, okay, there's not enough space for me to go and wander and you know
Oh yeah.
explore those kinds
Right.
of things. Um, Once you got into high school and you had that interest in excelling in the first couple of years, but towards the end of it, that started to fade off. Was there
Mm.
anything specific that triggered that, or was it just a natural? I'm just creative. I don't need this other information.
Mm. Yeah. I I sort of I sort of got bored with it.
Yeah. Okay.
And I realized that almost everything except for math, I could just show up for class and get a one or a two
Passing grade.
or a
Yeah.
passing grade, yeah. And 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 also part of it was my sister was super obsessive about getting straight A's.
Okay.
I don't know if this is true, but it's just my sort of a mythos about her.
Sure.
I've never asked her. I should ask her directly. She lives here in Omaha. If she ever got a B, ever, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but she had to work at it. She studied all the time, and I just didn't have it in. I brought all my books home in high school, or a bunch of them,
Yeah.
and always had assignments. I probably I had I finally did get help from another friend in math analysis, which was like advanced math senior year, and
Okay.
I was flunking that
Yeah.
because I just part of it is the teacher had been teaching so long, and he just that's the way he worked, is that he had the it was you had the problem, and then you had five multiple choice answers, and you had to work the problem out, show your work, and then you'd look and you'd see the answer you got was C. So you just put down C. Well, what you didn't know is that he had the number one answer, the real answer, and then he had the four most probable missed answers. You know, the answer that was most,
Okay.
the next answer that most people, like 20 out of 100 people got wrong, and he had that there. So when you saw the answer, you thought, "Oh, I got it right." So he was clever. So I finally brought that up to like a three,
Okay.
my last. So I did put effort into that. In physics, I aced physics because I loved physics, and in English, I got a 1 or 2 or whatever. So
Right.
it wasn't, and even in college, I was making art. I had a I got a my my professor gave me a studio as a sophomore, and graduate students were on a waiting list.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
because he saw that I was just like going crazy in the big painting room. Uh,
Right.
so all of my I did 1 year, I did try to get straight A's, just in some ways to make my dad happy,
Yeah.
because he was always saying, "Oh, you could do better than your sister," and like, no, I don't think I. She's obsessive. So, uh, but I missed it by like I got a B plus in something, and
Right.
everything else was A's. Uh, in especially in my art classes. So uh, I just I realized that I could coast
Yep.
and get passing grades, good grades in a way.
Yeah.
I think my GPA in college was 3.8 something. So
Okay.
I could just coast
Yeah.
without being stressed out. Except for Spanish. Spanish, first and second, I had to take 16 hours of Spanish in college for my BFA, and I worked my butt off in I think it was 5 hours each semester, and I had the same instructor. She was super good, uh, and I probably got a B in both. And
Yeah.
then maybe it was lucky. Maybe I could have gotten more out of it if I had to work harder. But for my last, maybe it was 13 hours. I can't remember. But I had this guy who was about to retire, and literally his last name was Carne, and he taught Spanish, right? And he was huge. He was a huge man, and he had lost interest. His passion was reading and speaking Spanish and opera. So we listened to Spanish opera, and we read one book in English, and it was Irving. Was that, who's the guy who wrote all those books? I can't remember the guy's name. A huge thick book, and we'd talk about the book, but it was we we all lucked out to just coast through our last few credits of requirement for Spanish, because
Nice.
this guy, and he was lovable. He was just a great guy. So, but
Yeah.
in college, the most I worked was in Spanish class. Everything else was I'd show up, and you know I'd read the material.
Yeah.
Uh,
Just do what was necessary.
yeah, do what was necessary. Yeah. So,
Gotcha. Was
but
your
but I was completely obsessed on making art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was your sister older or younger?
Older, 5 years older.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, yeah. And then I have a sister that's 13 years older than I am. So
Oh wow.
I was
Okay.
on the tail end.
And yes.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. So you did have an example, so to speak, of what the possibility was of education if
Oh yeah.
if you
Yeah.
wanted to do the thing. But
Totally.
art was art was your life.
Art was the thing. And my mom she read a book a day. She graduated at the top of her class from the university here in Omaha.
Okay.
Like she won that award,
Yeah.
top of the class. So I knew, she was bright, she was smart, but I was totally putting all of my focus into the art. And
Was
I was also avid. I was reading all the time, and still do.
okay.
So
Okay.
so at about sixth grade is when I started to read. Before that, I
No.
really I wasn't into it. Yeah.
Yeah. When you're looking at the family, Was there anybody else that had that creative juice flowing through them,
Mm,
or did it seem as if you were the one who was given that gift?
yeah, I was the one. Yet I in the writing I do about creativity, I I separate it into general creativity, conventional creativity, and specialized creativity.
Okay.
So it's easy to understand specialized because that's where all of us as artists are, and writers and painters,
Right.
musicians, etc. The conventional, I think my mom had a little bit of specialized, but a lot of conventional creativity.
Okay.
So she did crocheting
Right.
and 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 things like that. But she got to the point where she could look at something. She did these like crocheted fruits,
Okay.
and she looked at the patterns and then just did it. So she didn't actually follow the pattern. So by that time, she had enough of the kind of a solid grounding in her conventional creativity that she could
Yeah.
kind of slip over into the specialized area and just make these crocheted grapes or apples or oranges or whatever with leaves and a stem
Right.
and such. So and in a way, when I think about it in the way I write, I have been writing about it. Dad had a lot of conventional creativity. Any farmer has to.
Yes. Yes.
It's just an absolutely necessary part of being a farmer is
Yeah.
you have to figure stuff out.
Yeah.
We were all and part when you're especially when you're a poor farmer,
For sure.
because we would
Yes.
we would figure out how to fix it first, and
Yeah.
then the next step was go to a neighbor,
Yeah.
and then the next step was to hire somebody or have somebody come out to look at the tractor or whatever it might be. But the first thing we could do a lot. The second thing, farmers they're a jack of all trades. They have to be. So someone out in the countryside would be just right for that.
Yep.
So uh
Yeah. For sure.
my grandpa he was a photographer, like I said, and
Yeah. Yeah.
he did a lot of colorizing. He would hand paint black and white photos way back
Oh
in the
wow.
day, like the 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
He was experimenting with that. He had his own enlarger that my friend Keith and my best friend growing up, he and I made a little dark room down in their basement in this unfunctional bathroom, but we got the sink to work, which is all we needed.
Yeah.
Uh, so Grandpa, and he would invent toys and things
Okay.
for us to
Okay.
play with. So he definitely had a spark, and they both shared with me, or maybe after they died, we uncovered some super old school learn to draw books.
Yeah. Yeah.
They would have they would have little parts of some parts of an outline of a bird, and then you'd fill it in,
Yeah.
and and a blank page to try it on your own. So
Right.
they did have some semblance of interest, but they didn't pursue it. It's hard. It's a hard
Yeah.
choice to pursue.
Yeah. During that time, that it wasn't opportune to try and
Mm,
focus on the creative to make a living.
yeah.
And what I'm seeing as you're describing what your mother was able to do is that it's that perceptive knowing
Mm,
where you don't have to read the instructions line by line. You can look at it and be like, okay, I know how that goes together.
yeah. Totally.
That's that's interesting. So you do have some of that genetic.
Yeah. There's
Um,
stuff going on. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. When when you're senior in high school, um, had you already started in martial arts, or did that come later on in life?
That came just a few months after.
Okay.
So literally in July of graduating in
June.
77, July
Yeah.
of 77, my mom just said, are you going to go to college, or what are you doing?
Yeah.
I said, yeah. And she said, well, you should, you know, like go down and apply. But not a, I think I already applied, but I had to pick classes and do all the busy work. And so I
Yeah.
went from Omaha down to Lincoln, Nebraska, which is like 50 miles away. I drove down there, signed up for art. On the way, I decided physics or art, physics or art, physics or art. And
All right.
I kind of really felt like it was going to be art, but I had that like internal dialogue going. I got there, saw the counselor, the admissions guy, and he said, well, what do you want to do? And I told him I want to major in art. And he said, okay, a lot of that is, have, it's all, you don't have much of a choice. Here are the classes that you have to take.
Right.
He said, okay, those are great. I loved all those classes uh, on the sheet. And he said, pick a couple, electives. And I said, okay. And I picked one. And he said, well, you need one more hour. One more hour would be good for your first semester. And he knew my grades and what I was interested in, looking at my transcript. And I said, well, I don't know, what is 1 hour? What's just one credit hour?
Yeah.
And he said, well, the PE department has 1 hour classes. And I said, I don't want to take basketball or something like that, or volleyball. And he said, well, the combatives are really popular right now. And I was like, combatives? What do you mean? And he said, he said it this way. He said, the karate class is incredibly popular. And, the lights went on. I had been I don't know what year it started and how long it ran, but the Kung Fu series with David Carradine was super influential. Also, even more influential is the best friend that I mentioned earlier, Keith. His mom was full Japanese.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we met in the first grade. He lived a quarter of a mile up the hill from me. And we did, basically everything together all through grade school, junior high, and high school.
Yeah.
And so that was super. I knew bits and pieces of Japanese. I knew the culture to some degree, especially the food.
Yeah.
So it was just super interesting. And it was literally the first class of my college career. First 8:30 Monday morning, whatever, August 24th, 1977. And I was hooked. Within a couple weeks, there was a Tuesday, Thursday night, Saturday morning club that met in the dojo. And it had, obviously it had a lot of students in it, but it had, people who either had been students in college or other people from Lincoln.
Yeah.
And that was, literally, just this counselor saying, hey, you need one more credit, and me choosing, and just it becoming a major part of my life.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you see the discipline philosophy of that as being something of interest as well when you took those?
Yeah, for sure. It was, yeah, by that time in high school, and our physics teacher was exceptional. He was one of those teachers that were, like Ms. Krause, sixth grade teacher who helped me.
Yeah.
Bruce Esser was remarkable and super influential, not just for me, but, almost everybody that came into his classes.
Yeah.
Senior year, we had a bunch of us would just come up to the physics classroom and eat lunch with him, and we decided to form a philosophy club. And so we'd talk about the philosophy books we were reading. We would do like Sartre plays, No Exit, all these wild, crazy things that we were reading Camus and Kafka. So it was a place that, we could gather and talk about these things that were nobody else in school was really talking about.
Right, right,
So by the time I got to college, it was just part of my DNA. And that was a real important part of my teachers, Schmidt Sensei. He was teaching physiology there on campus,
okay.
and but we had a reading list for every belt. So, there's two or three
Oh,
books that you had to read to get to the next belt. If you got close to the test and you hadn't read the books, you couldn't take the test. So
uh,
so he had this system where you were learning about the culture and the philosophy, and and I have a real strong interest and joy in learning about philosophy and
right.
the later on in the upper belts. Uh, I can't think of it. Suzuki is his last name. D.K. Suzuki, I think, is his initials. Uh, the it's one of the most famous books on Zen Buddhism. So
Okay.
all of those, the Book of Tea. There's so many books that we were required to read, uh, and the philosophy was gripping. And what's interesting is that the I was in sort of a because of the my age. I think this is a natural phase, and the people we were reading in with Mr. Esser. Uh, I had merged into that realm of the exploring the world of atheism and
Okay.
not connected to anything with respect to religion or being somewhat anti-religious and but I had always kept that sort of that divine quality of nature in my inner self. So karate had this philosophical part that I was able to sort of move into my atheistic mindset at the time. But
Okay.
the more I trained, the more I realized that they aren't really just talking philosophical. There was actual physical manifestations of these extrasensory abilities, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so that I started to lose. I didn't really have much of a grip on the atheistic or the agnostic. Uh, it was more of a persona to
Sure.
kind of to fit into the hip group at the
Yeah.
time, and but that quickly started to shift in my own inner psyche, and I just started experiencing more and more things that it was obvious that there's more to physical reality than just the
Yeah.
material world, that I
Yeah.
was able to be aware of things and to move in certain ways without thinking. That only made sense if I allowed myself to trust a higher force.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. I always find that fascinating when you're able to look at different examples of uh, a philosophy that has a structured process attached to it, that it allows the mind to start opening up to things that you may not be necessarily open to prior.
totally.
And it's amazing from my perspective of those things. There's quite a few, or not quite a few, but at least three examples in your storyline so far where people have recognized something extra
Mm,
within you,
mm,
where they wanted to take interest, they
mm.
wanted to see you progress. Um, when you got that opportunity from the instructor in college, that allowed you to move into a space of your own, and knowing there's other people that are just above me that are waiting to
Mm.
get this opportunity? What did that do to your confidence level, that internal um, self that may have felt like I need to escape, I need to escape growing up? What did that do to that confidence level that you were recognized at that point?
Yeah, it was it was complex
Okay.
because it was on one level, in a way, even though that this word is so loaded and strange and packed with oddities, my ego loved that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but there's also a part of me, both a positive and negative part of my upbringing, that even though I was enjoying it, and my friends knew, of course, and they hung out in the studio. I had a phone, I had a sink, you know. I was a sophomore in college, right? I was like, oh, I had a master key
Oh,
to not only the building, but every door in the building. And
wow.
yeah, that's a crazy wild story that I've written bits and pieces of it with my instructor, Richard Tricky. Brilliant, crazy, wild, chain smoking, taught sailors how to cuss, wild painter that I happened to be blessed with, you know, by chance, signing
Yeah.
up for a Thursday, Friday painting class. Anyway, so my there was also part of me that, because it was sort of controversial, the head of the art department, which was he was a art history professor, but he also was a painter.
Okay.
His studio was in we were there was a large the building, the Richards Hall on the University of Nebraska Lincoln's campus, was the art building was the old engineering building that
Okay.
taught engineering, and it was redone sort of to have the art department in the praxis part of the art department. So you walk in the main door, and right off to the right was a large, probably maybe 1,500 square foot room that we had drawing classes in.
Okay.
My studio was right off to the side, and Dan Howard's was on the other side of the room. Behind, there was a closed-in area. It wasn't a big studio. Mine was smaller than his, thankfully.
Yeah.
But he came either walking out of his studio once, and I was walking into mine, and he said, "Hello, who are you?" And I introduced myself. You know,
Yeah.
I hadn't had a class with him. I never actually had a class with him. And he said, "What are you doing in Richard's studio, Mr. Tricky's studio?"
Yeah.
I said, "Well, it's my studio." And he said, "Who are you?"
Right.
And then he said, "Who are you working with?" And I said, "I'm working with Tricky." And he said, "Well, I know all his graduate students." And I'm starting to feel like, uh-oh. I said, "Well, I'm not a graduate student." And he was like, "What?" And I said, "Well, Richard gave me the studio like last semester or months ago or whatever it was." And he said, and he just walked off. And I said, uh-oh. So I went right over to Richard's studio, and I said, "I just had a little run-in with Professor Howard, and he seemed to be interested in why I had a studio." And in in uh, Richard's eloquent, uh, normal response was, "Fuck him." I said, "Okay." So, so that's all that ever came of it. He would glare at me if we saw each other, Dan Howard, and
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
So
amazing.
yeah. It was. So I had, and then sometimes I remember one moment when I was in a composition class taught by a graduate student. I came to class and he said, "Well, let everybody bring out the one notebook that we told you all to start." And he was standing right next to me, and I was looking through my backpack, and I said, I looked up at him and I said, "I don't have it. It's in my studio." And it was just like a an innocent
Yeah,
expression. And he
yeah.
looked at me and he said, and what was interesting is he said, "On campus?" And I said, "Yeah." And then he just walked away. So he had a studio on campus. But so there were little things that happened that were, I knew that it was a touchy subject.
Sure.
And on the other side of it, so there's the ego side and the conflict that happened. I was basically the only one in the art building at night.
Okay.
After 10 or 12 at night, it was me and the security guards.
Right.
Unless it was close to the end of the semester, then people would start showing up who were trying to, bust their,
Project's done.
yeah, to get things done for portfolios. Uh, I knew all the security guards by name. They knew me by name. They would say, "What are you working on?" So Richard knew when I had 4 easels up in the big painting room, and I had basically completed all of his assignment, and the other people were complaining. He asked me into his studio was right off the big painting
Sure.
studio. He asked me into the office and his studio, and he said, "Well, I'm hearing all kinds of people complain about you getting throwing paint all over the room, and what are you going to do about it?" And I said, I'm making paintings, maybe they should just move further away." And
Yeah,
he said,
exactly. That's not my fault.
yeah, he said, "Well, come with me." And that's when he showed me the space, and he said, "This is yours now. It's your studio. You can throw paint all you
Right.
want." I said, "Okay, great." Uh, and that was after I had started hanging out in his studio, and we would talk about art, we'd talk about philosophy, we'd talk about film, we'd scream and yell, we'd talk about other professors, we'd talk about New York City. We just had a great interaction. And he knew quickly in our conversations that I'd been in the studios till 4 o'clock in the morning last night.
Right. Right.
It said, "Oh, I went home, I slept for a couple hours, and I came back."
Yeah.
And so he knew he had chosen right and then what was also hard and conflictual is that he would have little displays in his studio. He'd have the other graduate students bring work in, and he'd have me bring work in,
Okay.
and he'd use my work to yell at them, which I thought was great. But when
Yeah.
I look back a few years ago, my wife and I processed this, and I was able to get pissed off at Richard for putting me in that place because a lot of the graduate students hated me to begin with, hated me because I had a studio
Yep.
at that age, hated me because I was always there, because whenever they showed up, they saw me,
Yeah.
and they realized that, oh, he's not just showing up to do his assignment.
Yeah.
I had stopped that basically right when Richard gave me the studio. I started making my own work, which wasn't very good. It was still student work. I made student work for 20 years, basically,
Yeah.
or maybe not student work, but I wasn't really making art with a capital A. I did a lot of paintings, and I spent a lot of time making work. So it was a technical mountain that I climbed
Yes. Yes.
to gain what I know now that I can do at a beck and call. So
For sure.
yeah.
Yeah, it's always fascinating to me when I hear a story where there's um, a professor or an instructor who sees that potential and encourages that and wants to engage with that individual. I think it's so important,
Mm,
and I don't think we see enough of that
mm,
in the art community nowadays. I mean, there's a side of it that wants to um, commune and support each other, but then there's that other side of it that's like, oh no, they're not doing it this way, so they're on the outskirts, that we
mm,
don't want them in our environment. But that nurture component that is imprinted on a young creative,
mm.
I think is very, very important. I think it's important on every individual, really, because we all have a creative component within us, that if we were to allow it to evolve, it could probably change a whole lot of our life stories.
Totally. I totally agree.
Um, as you're getting towards the end of those college years, are you starting to try and contemplate, all right, what am I going to do with this skill set once once college ends?
Yeah, I wasn't.
Okay.
uh, yeah, that is the it's just a strange then
Yeah.
and strange now looking back at it, right?
Sure. Yeah.
There's because it was just in some ways unhealthy obsession to make to make. I made hundreds and thousands of paintings,
Yeah.
tens of thousands of drawings. I recycled. I filled up a pickup truck in 2005. I think it was 2005 here in Omaha at my parents' house. I I I had tons of work stored there. Still, this is from, grade school, high
Yeah.
school, college, after college. Boxes would end up there on my travels and trips.
Right.
And I went through all my drawings that I had there, and I kept dozens and dozens and dozens of the ones that were A level, A plus level.
Sure.
And I just had a pile of recycle, which turned into a box, which turned into a number of piles. And I filled up my niece's pickup truck, the back end of the pickup truck, to the edge
Yep.
of drawings. And we went to the recycle and they're gone. There are just too many of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, there's part of me that, wishes, I wish more that I had saved some of the paintings I burned at that time and
Uh,
had a big bonfire, and just, it was a lot of work. It was toxic, undoubtedly.
yeah.
But it was cathartic in the moment. And, I mentioned it in one of the Substacks that I just wrote that there's a bit of a regret that I have about
Yeah.
getting rid of some of those, but again, they were still in that discovery mode, and it's not that even in my first few paintings, I feel like I made art with a capital A, but most of them were practice and exploration and discovery, and a lot of the paintings that I burned were in that category.
Yeah.
So, which
Yeah.
is fine. I'm trying to get back to where where your question was.
I get it.
Uh, I'm not there. Help me.
So, what was the mindset at
Oh yeah.
graduation? You did
Right.
because
Right.
you
So,
didn't think of it as, oh, I'm going to jump into going to work for this company or this other
well,
opportunity.
right. I did apply for graduate schools.
Okay.
Richard Richard helped, uh, and that was that the the disappointment of not getting in. And I even had a friend who was in the art department at Columbia, in the room where they had all the projectors. In that day, you sent a cassette with your slides in,
Hmm.
labeled and with a
Yep.
sheet and your
Yep.
everything else. And so they had hundreds of boxes of cassettes with names on it, and graduate students would put a cassette, and the professors were sitting, you know, uh, having pizza, and
Right.
and literally it was, they had like four screens up, and they would, no, 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 maybe, and the maybe would put in a pile. And
Right.
and Robert was there, and encouraging to for me to get into graduate school. But so that was the closest, didn't get in. So it took a little while to kind of readjust to that, to
Okay.
how I move forward, not continuing to get my MFA. When I look back, I'm glad I didn't,
Yeah.
because it allowed me more freedom.
Yeah.
And Richard and I had a lot of discussions about MFAs and MFA students and teachers, and that's one of his criticism was, all the people I know getting their MFA when I got mine are doing the same painting as they did when they got their
Yeah.
MFA.
Yeah.
And Richard was not in that camp. He was way out there. Uh, so so I had that backup, and he
Okay.
basically said, you got your MFA, right after I gave you your studio.
Right.
I was like, okay, thank you. That made sense, and
Yeah.
which in a lot of sense is true. So it gave me the freedom to 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 keep exploring and uh, keep thinking about my artwork. And an important thing that Richard said, he said, you're gonna leave. We're not gonna see each other much. You're gonna have to find another teacher. And he said it may be, a person, or it may be another artist that you want to explore. And
Okay.
so that was super good advice. And then for the next 10 years, I read just tons, everything that I could, almost, not everything because there's too much written on Picasso, but I studied Picasso because he seemed to be the person. He is, at least for all of us born in the 20th century, he is the artist that you have to confront. And
Okay.
with that in mind, there's no other, you can't just walk slowly next to Picasso and get anything out, because you have to dive in and put your boxing gloves on and just fight your way out. It's
Yeah.
my dad would, when he would get a new rat terrier, he would capture a rat and have a 5 gallon or 50-gallon barrel, toss them both in, and the one that came out, either the one that is the rat terrier or the rat. And so then he'd kill the rat. So
Yeah.
the same with Picasso. I put myself in a 50-gallon drum with Picasso, and we boxed until I came out. And not that I didn't come out with, I came out with bruises and abrasions and such, but
Okay.
it was necessary, because he remains the biggest influence of art almost ever.
Yeah.
Michelangelo was another main focus that I've had in my life. I think his influence on painting is bigger than Picasso's, but Picasso on art and creativity was immense. So Richard gave me that advice. So I spent a huge amount of time reading and looking at Picasso's work and sometimes seeing originals.
Okay.
And then I had the idea, of course, I'm just going to get a gallery, and then that's it. That's what I'll do. And galleries at that time were not as focused on MFAs as they are now.
Got you.
But it was still a thing that when all I had was a BFA, they were less enthused, and frankly, I can say it now, my work wasn't at a level that I should be in a gallery. In my 20s and into my 30s for sure. I was still, up until maybe 34, I just wasn't at a level for myself to be in a gallery. But I wanted it, that's what I thought I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
So not all, like 90% of all of us who are, artists, painters, I'll talk about painters, we had part-time jobs.
And what were some of those part-time jobs that you had?
I was a rec attendant in the Seattle Parks Department. I also taught art in the Seattle Parks Department. I also taught karate in the Parks Department. Those were all part-time jobs. Well, good paying part-time jobs. I worked at an art store, Dakota Art in Seattle. All this was in Seattle. In Lincoln, Nebraska, when my first job after graduating was as a janitor at an office building that IMPay built, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And the kid, the high schooler who was in charge of all of us janitors, they were all high schoolers except for me and this other guy who had just gotten out of prison.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He said, okay, you two, you're on the third floor, because it was the executive floor.
Yeah.
And what was great is that it had art. Like serious blue chip art. So I was like in heaven. So that was cool. But then I got a job as an attendant on a school bus. Then I got my school bus driver's license, and then I drove school buses for a couple years.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was an aide I drove school buses for 4 Lincoln Public Schools, but I was driving for Head Start. And I did that for a few years, and then I started as an aide in the classroom in Head Start. But driving was, in some ways, not conducive to staying up late painting.
For sure.
And it was enjoyable, and it paid well in the day. I was making like almost $10 an hour back in the early 80s.
Yeah.
And then, oh gosh, I've had, what else? Worked in a daycare. I had a lot of teaching experiences.
Yeah.
Even in the art store, you're basically a teacher. You're helping people learn how to start painting or drawing or sculpting or whatever it might be, and guiding them in certain ways. Yeah.
What tools to pick, what paints to you want to start with, all that. Yeah.
And I also did artist in residencies and for Seattle Public Schools, but also for outlying suburbs and cities. I did visiting artist programs that I'd just come in and speak about art and speak about my art and sometimes do a little workshop with the kids. Lots of part-time jobs, and sometimes 2 or 3 in a day.
Yeah.
And I always painted at night. So whatever job I had, whenever it ended, I'd eat and then paint. So painting was always a night owl process up until I was 40.
Do you find that that night owl mentality? Have you seen that across multiple genres of art in your experience?
Somewhat. I had a friend in Seattle, the the only painter I've known that had the same obsessiveness
Yeah.
as I do. I could call him at 12 o'clock at night and say, could you come over and look at this? Because I knew he was painting,
Yeah.
or he would do the same.
Yeah.
And we I got involved, and I think it's still going on. I'm not sure. They may have ended. It was called Art Detour in Seattle. And so I got my friend involved, and part of it was people visiting studios on a certain weekend, a couple weekends in the year. And that was my first time around a lot of artists in one space. And
Okay.
I had 40 of them in my studio in Seattle. And I had a 1,500 square foot studio loft space, 12-foot ceilings,
Oh wow.
20-foot windows at the end. And at the time, it was for an art detour meeting before it was right before we were going to launch. And I had a drawing on my wall. I had a 55-foot long wall that was 13 feet tall. I had it, seamless drywall I put up so I could make these drawings. And I had a
Right.
25-foot long drawing on the wall. It was 80 inches high and 300 inches long, 25 by 6 foot, whatever. Everybody, all these artists were there in my studio. I had wine and cheese, and it was a big meeting, and and no one except the organizer, Sarah, on her way out. Jeff and I, my friend, was there. On the way out, she said, "Thanks for having the meeting. Thanks for hosting. Oh, and the art, fabulous." And she left. And Jeff and I looked at each other, and I said, the first thing I said, "Did anybody talk to you about what was on the wall?" And he said, "No, it was the weirdest thing ever." So I, it it was strange. So uh, I can't remember why I got out of that story. Oh,
The night owl.
the night owl. Yeah. So I I was there were a few people that I would meet that were sort of night owls.
Yeah.
Obviously, a bunch of musicians who were that they were always, they were
Yeah.
doing gigs and they were out late. So
Right.
that was kind of built into their genre, so to speak. But it was by necessity for me that it was the only section of time that I had that I wasn't doing part-time jobs.
Right. Right.
So I had when Rebecca, my wife, had moved out to Seattle at the end of 1999, I had a timer, and I'd been using this for years, that I had used when I had regular jobs. But the timer was for me to wake up after a couple hours of sleep or 3 hours of sleep, whatever I was, because I would always get up at like 8 o'clock in the morning, no matter what.
Okay.
Now I'm an early bird riser. I'm up at, well, we have a four-legged clawed furry alarm clock
Right.
that's 16 years old that picks at,
Yeah.
bites my toe, and
Yeah.
that wakes me up. So, and that's sometimes 5:30, sometimes 6. It was later this morning for whatever reason.
Right.
Anyway, I shifted out of 9 hour mode
Yeah.
when Rebecca and I met, and it her relationship was more important to me to build then possibly altering that or changing or damaging it by me staying up all night painting.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
and I had sort of switched. In 1997 is when I got that large loft space in Seattle, and I had no other job than painting.
Okay.
So I had a client, a big client that was two big clients that were I was doing work for, and I was doing some small things for a design company. So, excuse me, I had income, and that was directly related to my art. So I didn't have to have a part-time job.
Right. Right. The reason I ask that question is because I find that within myself as well.
Mm,
A lot of times I will have the most craziest ideas that come to me in the evening.
mm,
And the closer I get towards midnight is when those usually pop up. Um, and I've always had that. I literally have to shut myself down and make myself go to bed. Otherwise, I could be up all night. And I've had to do that based off of, the struggles that I've had with mental health and different
mm,
things. I'll get into, you know, if I allow that to continue to take over, it becomes a problem
mm-hmm.
because then you become sleep deprived,
Right,
which enhances the mental
right.
stressors, all of those things.
Like a roller coaster.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Really
Exactly.
remarkable highs and then
Yeah,
lows.
lows for
Yep.
sure. During this time, you've got this gallery. You're working with these other clients, which is bringing some funds in and whatnot. And then now you've got your wife that's coming into the picture as well. Um, do you have a sense of, all right, this is working. This is what I'm going to continue pursuing. Um, but also, you mentioned I'm adjusting my schedule
Mm,
so that it's now going to accommodate an additional person in my life that I'm really interested in uh, nurturing that connection with. Is that allowing you to start thinking of future possibilities and opportunities? Or is it, all right, we're just here in this, let's just focus on this?
right. I feel like strangely, and I don't think that this is it seems so personal, but I know it's somewhat universal, right?
Yeah.
That part, a large part, obviously, is all those issues growing up
Yeah.
would somehow put a curtain in front of me about thinking about the future.
Okay.
But there is also a sense of having an incredible confidence in myself.
Right.
You touched on it that these people saw this in
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Oh, from Grandpa to
Yeah.
Miss Krause to Mr. Esser to Tricky to Schmidt Sensei, and then others. I knew that I was always moving into a sense of deep or deepening ability and skill technique, and I was making better and better and better and better. I felt that, and I saw it in results.
Yeah.
So there was part of me that was confident that, yeah, this is going to work out. This is I'm going to get galleries. And that just reminded me, the correction to the intro was all those galleries, I had those galleries. I'm not in any galleries right now.
Okay.
I'm solo represented. So I'm
Got
just
you.
representing myself, which is
Yep.
I get 100% of the profits,
Right.
so rather
Exactly.
than rather than 50-50. 50-50 doesn't feel right after 20 plus almost 30 years of doing it this way.
Right.
So
Much better deal. Much
yeah,
better
yeah,
deal.
yeah. So I there's a I saw Alex Gray speak once years ago in Chicago in person, and we chatted afterwards. But he said during his little talk, he said he was talking about being in high school and college and then right after. And this is applicable to what we just talked about. And to myself, because when he said it, it was like, oh yeah. He said, to be a painter, even though you know it's not true, when you're young, you have to tell yourself you're doing something new and special and great.
Yeah.
Because it's the only way we can get through making
Right.
a bunch of shitty work, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so even my my vision of what I I know that I was going to be able to accomplish started when I first started painting,
Okay.
and it just kept building. And that curtain has always been there up until recently, when I started working on this addiction to lack
Ah.
that's connected to growing up, that's
Yes.
connected to the neglect,
Yes.
that is so subtle. So it's like this ugly, toxic thread through the tapestry of my life that I can't see, and hardly anybody else can see when they look at the tapestry, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Some people can. My wife, Rebecca, she can see it. She knows it. She can feel it. She's super brilliant, and has helped me in this process of trying to grab that little thread and pull it out, because
Right.
it doesn't need to be there anymore.
Yeah.
And there is a visceral addictive quality to that, keeping lack right there. And I don't know what I do subconsciously sometimes in a conversation, or when people look at my work. I have all kinds of stories of some of them are from when my work wasn't worth, and blessings to those gallery owners that said, I'm full right now, I'll
Yeah.
keep your card or whatever. But then there's stories when, after I started making work that was, I think is meaningful, that other people respond to well, that galleries are, it's just a weird, strange
Yes, it is.
culture. And I understand to a large degree that they if I if I made widgets and they sold widgets and I brought my widget in, and they'd say, well, they're basically saying, my widgets are too big. They only
Right.
smell small widgets. You know,
Yeah.
they have, I mean, I'm sure you have tons of stories, both with respect to making jewelry and fashion,
Yeah.
of people just like not not seeing it, not getting it, or
Yeah.
it's not meant to be. So, and it's better that way than
Yeah. For
trying
sure.
to force it. So I've had this. I'm still working through this, right? I mean, it's intense. It's the recovery, literally, of all these different things that can be, and I've done tons of work on that, as
Yeah.
in therapy before Rebecca and I met, but in processing with her.
Yeah.
But this awareness of my addiction to lack has just become real prevalent in the last couple of years.
Okay.
moving back to our hometown. She grew up just right across the river in Iowa, and we graduated the same year of high school. So we are, you know, we have so many interactions that are similar. Uh, and she grew up not exactly the same way, of course, but has a lot of similar processes growing up. So there's a lot of, and but she has gifts of growing up that I didn't have, and I had some that she didn't have. So
Sure.
there's a good give and take. But working on this has been a wild process of trying all kinds of things. I've attempted to, and I've had successes, in sales, and my highest price is, close to halfway to $100,000. So,
Yeah.
that is way above most of us non-gallery represented artists in the
Right.
world, and
Yeah.
and I'm confident about my big work. It just takes the right connection, and it's just like in any business, no matter who you talk to, it is meeting the right person at the right time.
For sure. For
So,
sure. Do you mind if we stick on this just a little
oh yeah,
bit?
yeah, I'm happy to.
Okay. And the reason I ask that is because I recognize that in myself. Growing up middle class and probably lower middle class, although at that point in time you don't see that structure. You just think, all right, this is just what it is.
Right.
But my dad's family, 11 kids, all working on other people's farms to make ends meet. So you didn't have, you just had what you had. My scenario of growing up, it was always, this is what we have. This is what's on the table for dinner. This is what you're eating, right? This is what is available. So that's what you get. Um, they did teach me early on that if you want something, you've got to go out and you work for it. You got to get it, get the money to be able to buy it because we don't have extra money to be able to do so. Um, and I did. I went out, mowed grass throughout the neighborhood, those like types of things to make money early on as a uh, going into middle school. But I recognize that within myself that there's this storyline of lack
Mm.
that it always is coming up and coming up and coming up. And I've seen this as well within the artist community that there's some artists that just can do well and are able to set their price point and get that price point, and there's others that struggle just to figure out what is this worth, what is the value that I put on this. With your processing of it, and fortunately you have somebody who's a partner that knows this way to navigate it with her work that she does.
Hmm.
Is it something that is bringing clarity quickly, or is it something that's just a continuous, I've got to keep working at this, got to keep working at this?
I think both,
Okay.
strangely.
All right.
I I know I need to keep working on it because the the quality of life hasn't changed, for better term, financial quality.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
we're 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 stable, you know,
Yep.
part of why we moved back to Omaha because it's incredibly less expensive. We were in Boulder, Colorado, crazy expensive.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, and divinely God-given synchronicity. I'm in a 500 square foot studio that is right down from the house. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we're
Okay.
right in the middle of town. It's
Right.
where we walk to the farmer's market. It's amazing, a
Yes.
giant blessing. So I'm, there's one part that I know I'm working on it, that I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
But also I'm finding myself that I'm able to think more clearly. I have more space. I can't say what was in the way in my mental space. I
Mm-hmm.
can't say, oh, those thoughts or that line of thinking or that package of crap is what was wrong, and I know I put that in the garbage. I can't say that. All I know that is that I have more space. One example is the Substack. I
Okay.
I I'm I I'm in a routine with that.
Got it.
There is I don't know who I was speaking. It might have been another podcast. I was talking about, oh, no, it was Impact. I'm part of it, Impact. I want to talk to you about it.
Okay.
Because the leader is always wanting me to find people who would be great for the group, and you'd be great for the group.
Okay.
But I was saying, I have no problem painting
Yeah.
ever since I was 14 years old. It's like
Right.
I'm there. I just pick up a brush and I'm doing it. And I give a lot of thought to it, and I study it, and all those things. When it comes to writing, it's a little bit challenging, but with encouragement over the years from Rebecca, she's a writer also. She loves my Substack, which is fabulous.
Sure.
It's a great compliment, right?
Yeah.
And I'm working on manuscripts, like 3 manuscripts. One basically that I don't need to do much to get it finished. But those things are challenging. Then there's some administration things that are challenging.
Yes.
And the most challenging is thinking about finding clients, calling people up, sending emails. And I get these little bursts of
Right.
ideas,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
I follow them, and they just kind of in some ways lose steam
Mm-hmm.
on both ends, or my end or their end or someone's end.
Yes. Yes.
And it just, they're still good ideas, but it's just a weird, I know that that's what I'm really working on. I'm making progress,
Okay.
but still I don't. Rebecca says this, the work that I make, and I have been making for essentially 30 years,
Yeah.
is remarkably saleable.
Yeah.
Much of it. Some of it is in a different realm of saleable, if this makes sense. That
Yes. Absolutely.
as an example, the big graphite work that I it's where Rebecca and I met in a show, and it happened to be in Omaha. I was living in Seattle, and she was
Okay.
staying with her mom, helping her and her grandfather. And she happened to walk by the gallery, and that's a major story. But
Okay.
anyway, uh, that that show is not, it's not a gallery. You don't walk into a gallery and see that kind of work usually.
Correct.
It was monumental work, and it was almost all of it. It was taking bits and pieces of Michelangelo's work, a sculpture, a painting, or a drawing, and putting them together in me making up a story of my own with using his work. And
Yeah.
some of it, looking back, I was using these huge, I was making the hands incredibly, like 8 feet long,
Right.
huge hands, which in some regards were, for better word, the hand of God. The
Sure.
how
Yep.
how God is in our life in a big way
Yeah.
all the time. that work is, and I have other work like that, that is not gallery work. You don't walk downtown anywhere into a gallery and look at that work. Even in New York City, there are some galleries who have that kind of work on the wall, but
Yeah.
not very much. So that's a difficulty. I
Yep.
don't know who to talk to about that kind of work. So the lack energy, that addiction, pushes me into, in some ways, staying small
Yes.
or thinking small in
Yes.
that way. But I don't have any restraints on myself with respect to art,
Right.
of making art and what I want to make art. I've thought of this a lot lately. This is of not having started to paint barns, and I'm using barns as a symbol of
Okay.
someone glomming onto something,
Yeah.
starting to paint it, painting it for 40 years, and making an income from that. And
Yes.
I'm sure you could have examples in the jewelry world or
Oh,
in the fashion world.
oh yeah.
Somebody gets a design and they stick with it, and it's the
Yep.
same. Going to your favorite restaurant and they have those 5 things on the menu all the time because people love them. And if they
Yes.
took them off the menu, they'd lose half their clientele. So
For sure.
I don't make art like that.
No, exactly.
I never have, and I can't. Like the painting behind me is that I'm telling that story on Substack that I haven't even gotten into, so many parts of it, but it's speculative.
Right.
I'm like one of the strangest, most I'll just not being embarrassed, one of the most talented. Uh, can't think of the word that I was just going to use. Speculative artists.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every
Yeah.
everything I've done in years has been completely speculative. It's because I have been moved by it.
Right.
I made a painting starting in 2020 of all the things I was feeling because of the craziness the world was plunged into.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then finished it when I got here. And I had before that I had worked on a painting for 9 years, one painting, eight
Wow.
feet by 77 inches, from a dream Rebecca had.
Okay.
And I made other paintings about 6 years into that. But for 6 years, that's all I did, all I worked on. So
Yeah.
this is about the core of creativity ultimately, and sacrifice, you know. And
Yeah.
part of the sacrifice is connected to my addiction to lack,
Yeah.
and part of the sacrifice is a is a celebration of what creativity really is.
Yeah.
That it is without hesitation.
Yeah.
I would die on that hill.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to say that again for you. Creativity without hesitation.
Mm.
The ability to tap into that, and I can feel your emotion as well
Mm.
because I know it. I know it intrinsically.
Mm-hmm. I can feel that too.
The the ability to just go with it. Allow yourself to move with that flow state, that being in that zone of creating, which is, I would venture to say, is as close to being connected to the creator as an artist potentially can get when you're in that, because a lot of times all sense of time and space dissipate.
Mm-hmm.
It just fades out, and you're doing the thing that it's coming through you, it's moving through you, and through your hand onto whatever medium you're working with. But being able to allow yourself to step into that without the fear, of the outside circumstances, without
Mm.
the fear of I've got to make a certain amount of money or I've got to have this done in a certain amount of time. Without those fears, those constraints, it's freedom.
Mm. Well,
It's true freedom. Um, and I hope that the audience, anybody that's listening to this, can get this message
mm.
that that is a space of freedom outside of a lack mentality. Because when you step into that, you're able to step into the source of everything. It's abundant.
Mm.
It doesn't shut off until you shut it off.
Mm.
And I think that's the contrast of the lack mentality that,
Totally.
that we both experience.
Yeah.
Um, it's not always profitable
Mm-hmm.
in the ways of this world,
Mm-hmm.
but I think, like you're saying, that's the give and take of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
For me personally, I would prefer to be able to stay in that as much as possible, and I think that would dissipate that lack mentality. And I don't know what the psychological connection or correlation of this would be from potentially your wife's perspective,
Mm.
but I know, I've looked at this through all of the psychiatrists and cognitive therapists that I've worked with over the years, and it's never really been presented in this way
Mm.
as it's coming to me now through our
Mm.
discussion. Um, but I think it's an opportunity to alleviate some pressure off of a creative if they can
Totally.
if they can see it from that perspective,
Absolutely.
and they can allow.
Mm.
Whereas you're saying you wouldn't change it for anything to be able to have that and tap into that. Um, you wouldn't sell it off at any price
Mm.
because it is invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that's a beautiful place that we got in that, allowing for that conversation to expand.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
For
you.
sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's what when you said that, it it made me feel how awkward I experience my stumbling around with prayer,
Sure.
but when I'm painting, I know that that is prayer.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's that communion
Mm-hmm.
with the divine. Um,
Straight up.
because creativity is a divine characteristic,
Mm.
right? It's from the origin.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So with the opportunities that you've had to be able to speak about your work over the years
Mm.
to different audiences, one being on the TEDx platform, have you found that to be as fulfilling as doing the painting?
Mm. Nearly. Yeah.
Okay.
It's close. I mean, there's nothing drawing and painting. It is something harmonic
Yeah.
in me. But when I'm speaking with people, speaking to you, but knowing that, others are going to hear,
Yeah.
other audiences that I've done podcasts for and with, and with the hosts, but also teaching over my lifetime, it brings a joy that is undescribable because
Yes.
it is creative. I don't know, at 9:59, I didn't know what we were going to talk about, but I was super excited about having the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, there are, yeah, and I knew that we were going to go deep. I absolutely knew that, and and I was excited about that. There was a little bit of maybe not trepidation, but
Apprehension.
apprehension, anxiousness. But
Yeah.
my wife and I do it all the time. It's like, oh yeah, last night we went deep. So, and it was intense, and I knew how to dive, and that, you know, I would come back up for air.
Right. Yeah.
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 So yeah, I really thank you for that. That was superb. And I loved, like I said when we first talked, and I was listening, almost had his name, has a French name, first name, I think, your friend
Pierre.
Pierre, yeah. And how you said, let's circle back to that. And it was just spot on.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so I knew that that was in the
In the
works.
cards for today.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. That's the that's the benefit for me from my perspective as a host, um, to not have things scripted out.
Hmm.
Is because I'm already paying attention and putting pins in different aspects of the
Hmm.
story, that I can just draw a circle back to. Um, and I think those are the opportunities that allow the audience to get those golden nuggets
Hmm.
at
For
different
sure.
points in time.
Yeah.
Points in time. With being back in the area that you are, and in a place and time of abundant, uh, or maybe not even abundant. It's a space and time where everything is taken care of, so to speak.
Mm.
Being in the location, the home, the
Mm.
studio, the market. Um, does that also allow you freedom from the constraints of some of that lack mentality,
I think so.
knowing that the provisions are there?
Yeah.
I just have to do what I do.
Hmm. Yeah. There's definitely a stability I feel, and there's I think enough, in a way, anxiety
Yeah,
to say, God, just pushing in one of these or all of these or a dozen or 10 or one, or I don't know, pushing some things, because part of it, maybe it's not positive, but I know things will work out. I just, and part of that is having made art.
yeah,
It, I just know, I don't know what, when I started doing portrait work a couple years ago, I had no idea what I was doing. It was when I first started, I thought, oh my God, nobody's going to know about this. I mean, it took a lot in a way for me to be as as transparent to put up backstage on my Substack, because when I look at it, and I, not that I want to influence people at all, I see so many. I could repaint the painting, and it would be
yeah,
such a better painting, but
yeah, yeah.
then it wouldn't be my first group of portraits.
Right.
So I feel good about myself that I'm willing to show these stumbling steps of me starting to understand, you know, just a tiny bit of
Yeah.
how to make portraits. So,
Right.
uh, remind me of the question.
It was asking if it was alleviating some of the
Oh, yeah.
lack pressure.
Yeah, for sure. It is. But I want, and some of it is there's the age factor too.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Sure.
I'm thinking, well, you know what? I've told people, a few people, not many people, but all around in the storage spaces around my studio and down in our garage and in our basement is packed with all my really, really decent art.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like my 401k,
Yeah.
but I have to start, uh, in a way, engaging that process
Right.
of getting people to find out who I am
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
say, oh my God, you have this and you have that, or I want that, I want that, and the people who can afford it. So, and I have a lot of work that's small that is super affordable also. So, and
Yeah.
making prints and all those things are in the works, but that the lack monster, whatever we call it,
Yes.
creeps in and pushes or
Yeah.
just takes all the air, oxygen out of the room or whatever it might be, and deflating or whatever.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Most definitely. With Satori Innovation, how did you come up with that concept
Mm.
of creating that and then curating it as a consulting and ideation
Mm.
accelerator?
Well, it it the origin story is connected to my wife and I have a nonprofit that
Okay.
we've had since 2000, basically 2000, but we got our status from Uncle Sam in 2001, May of 2001. It's called Satori Institute.
Okay.
So it's an arts and education. We do investigative reporting and also healing work. So it covers a lot of spaces and domains. And through that, I had developed talks and wrote some about creativity because that was one of our educational themes.
Okay.
And living in Boulder, I started just to be around a bunch of entrepreneurs, and business folks,
Yeah.
and I would listen to them, and I'd say, oh, you just need to know how to tap into your creativity, and they'd say, well, what do you mean? I'm creative, and I said, well, how? Tell me how you're creative, and they'd say a few things, and I say, well, I think you can go deeper with that.
Yeah.
So, and I saw this really, really deep need for, especially in the entrepreneurial world, where they thought they were being creative and they were nowhere in the ballpark. They weren't even in the same town
Yeah.
as creativity. They were somewhere in a old dump site or something. Right? And they were thinking that, oh, here are our 7 steps of building our business, and innovation is one of them.
Yeah.
And they're going to have the team and we're going to have the meeting next month on Tuesday at 9 o'clock, and that's our innovation meeting. And then bada bing, bada boom, we'll be set. And it's like, oh, dude, that ain't how it works.
Right.
I can do that.
Yes.
I can say, oh, next month on Tuesday, the 29th of August, I can have a meeting where I'm creative, but I'm creative every day up until that point and every day after and years
Yeah.
before and years after. So, but they're not. They think that they can just pull it out of the atmosphere
Yeah.
and push the river. They can't. And so I thought, hey, I should come up with some ideas on how to help people get back into their original innate creative natures, which we all have. You know that. I know that.
Yeah.
As creatives, we know that because we're still connected to how we were creative when we were children. That never stopped. With most people, it stops.
Yes.
So I came up with some terminology around how it stops, why it stops, how to get it back, et cetera, et cetera. And I've done a lot of one-on-ones with people. I've talked to a lot of people on podcasts about it. People are very interested in it. I've talked to some businesses, some big Fortune 500 businesses about it, and they're like right there with me in the meeting, telling stories. Oh my God, this is so incredible. This is great. They get back to the office, and office brain sets in and they think, I don't think we can make this profitable with regards to what we bring him in and how do we increase our percentage of whatever. So it
Right.
always gets kind of blocked in a way. So
Yes.
some probably I may be putting off some vibe, but to me, there's a lot of, I call it creative collapse, where people, they've lost their creativity and they are super either completely blank about
Yep.
creativity, or they're aggressive.
Yeah.
They push it away.
Yeah. It's
So
shut down.
shut down. Yeah.
Yeah. That I know exactly what you're saying. There's so many potential opportunities that could unfold
Mm-hmm.
if an individual or a company were able to tap into that and see the big picture vision
Mm,
as we as creatives have the ability to do,
totally.
and can see it full on and blown out to its fullest extent,
Mm,
to get somebody else to experience that is the difficult thing.
it
uh,
is.
and
Yeah.
I completely understand that.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but the concept of that, I think, is phenomenal. Even the structures of it is phenomenal. And
Mm,
you know what? It might be the opportunity. And I'm saying that because of experiencing your story today,
mm.
is that gets shifted over to creatives.
True.
Creatives.
I have thought about that a
Okay.
little bit
Okay.
in the process, because this has been a long process. I've
Yeah.
been exploring this for a long time, writing the manuscript and sending stuff out. I have workshops, so that 1 day workshop, 2 day, 3 day, week-long workshops,
Okay.
individual mentor, team mentorships, company mentorships, the whole gamut, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm prepped for that on a business level or entrepreneurs. And I thought, you know what? There's a lot of people in different levels of their creative inner expression. They may be just starting, they may be midway, they may have been doing it for 40, 50 years. And there's still some bumps or issues or uh, addictive connections that aren't, maybe obviously substances could be involved, but
Sure. Yeah.
I'm talking about lack or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yes.
abandonment or whatever it might be. They all kind of lump into one in a
They
way.
do.
So I've thought about that, Rich, and that's a good idea, and it might be I will sit down with that. I'll talk to Rebecca about it too. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Excellent. Excellent. The philosophy of creativity, as we're kind of tailing off here towards a closing, what does that look like from your perspective?
Yeah. It it looks really clear from
Okay.
my perspective. Very, I know it in the quantum foam of my being,
Right.
way smaller than in my molecules or atoms, just
Yeah.
all the way down to the tiniest level. I know this backwards and forwards of this core philosophy. And at a larger level, I know it even more deeply in the last few years because of how I've reestablished essentially a connection to God.
Okay. Yeah.
And that connection is, oh yeah, that's what you are,
Yeah.
in that
Right.
ineffable way that we are unable to conceive of anything at that level. We have a little glimmer moments of that immense love that we
Right.
feel at times in our life, the immense creativity that we feel, those supercharged high level experiences are the God experience
Yeah.
that we are able in our tiny process in comparison to the the infinite, literally,
Right.
that we can conceive. And I feel more and more that the the philosophy of creativity that I'm tuning into is more so connected to that
Okay.
as an origin space
Yes.
than than thinking or
Right.
feeling. But
Right.
there's a lot of thinking, a lot of feeling involved in it. But the core is there. There, I have a dear friend that we played tennis together in Boulder for 5 years, and we would have these fun, not in a bad way, arguments,
Yeah.
philosophical arguments, or current event arguments, or situational arguments.
Yeah.
And at one point, after years, I thought, Alex, I know exactly why we disagree. And he said, why? What did you figure out? And I said, you're a materialist and I believe in God. And he just looked at me like, well,
Yeah.
that was pretty heavy.
You're right.
And
Yeah.
he said, you're right. And I said, yeah, I know I'm right. So and that for me was a another level of me understanding people, or me understanding, as a weird example, not to get too far off course, but all the talk about AI.
Okay. Yeah.
All the talk about AI is mainly marketing. 99% of it is marketing.
Yes.
The people who say it's going to fix everything in the world, and the people who say it's going to kill us all. They're both marketing AI.
Yeah.
But they're all materialists, meaning that they only believe in matter, that the world is just physics,
Yeah.
and the computer is just a computer, and we're just a meat machine. And
Right.
so a computer can do what we can do, but that is absolutely inaccurate.
No. No. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So this awareness, back to the philosophy of creativity, is a massive amount of it is about this. The basis of philosophy is originates from the divine, from
Right.
God.
Yeah.
So whenever I'm able to sit there, which is the place that I sit or stand when I'm making art
Yeah.
in a natural way, whenever I can blend myself or harmonize with that quality that I have when I'm making a drawing or making a painting,
Yeah.
if I apply that to when you just asked that question of the philosophy of creativity, and I'm able to surrender that into God, then I
Yeah.
know just what to do. And
Right.
and obviously that also applies to my addiction to lack. Bringing God into the situation instantly pushes the lack out, I believe. So me remembering that and coming from that harmonized space is super important.
Yeah. That was a beautiful summation. Beautiful. Because I think you're 100% on the money with it. Um, and that is, again, I've been seeing it tie back to your younger years as well when uh, karate came into play.
Mm,
Where and the way that you described it, that it was presented to you was it was combative, right? The combative
right.
sport, but the philosophy behind it is not combative at all.
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
Uh,
No.
And I think that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Um, as I always like to close out, I want to always remind the audience and the creative community that may be listening with their journey that they're on, the ups, the downs, the pivots, the sideways maneuvers, to listen to your heart,
Mm.
but always be kind to your mind.
I love that. I saw that last night
Yeah,
as one of your banners, and
yes,
it just made me smile.
yeah.
Be
That's
kind to your mind.
you have to, nowadays.
You can complain about your brain, but be kind to your mind.
Yes, perfect, perfect.